Hello everyone, it's Tracy. Welcome back to my channel. Thanks very much for joining me. Today I'm doing the assembly tutorial for the double lantern. This project has been designed by Nicole Silhouette here on YouTube, and I shall link her YouTube channel in the description box below. The double lantern is available only as a digital cutting file in Nicole's Etsy store, Nicole's Paper Crafts, and I shall link that in the description box below. I have all my pieces cut out. We'll get started and we'll go through the pieces first before heading on to the tutorial. So I've got all the pieces here for the double lantern. There are a lot of pieces. This is a big project and I've got them separated into 5 groups. I've got this group here, which is sort of like the skeleton pieces. This is the lid and handle. These are the walls and windows, and these are the base and feet pieces. So I'm going to go through each of those groups. The first group are these pieces, and these pieces are sort of like the skeleton pieces. They make up the framing of the lantern. These two are the 2 ends of the lantern. These are the 2 sides, even though I'm holding them in the wrong orientation. Sorry about that. And these 2 pieces make up the top of the lantern that the lid fits into. Most of the pieces for this lantern are quite large, so the pieces would not fit into a die cutting machine if this was in dies, so it's only available as a digital cutting file. So you can see I've gone ahead and folded along all the score lines of these pieces and put double-sided tape on the glue tabs. The next lot of pieces make up the lid and the handle. So I've got these pieces here. There are 2 long pieces, and you can see where I've put double-sided tape on the glue tabs and folded along the score lines, and some tape goes on that underneath side on the back because this piece will fold up like so for strength. You'll also want to give these pieces a little bit of curvature, and you can do that by rolling them in your hands or using an embossing tool or the edge of your table. And these are the 2 end pieces, the shorter end, and they're the same except they're a little bit shorter. And this piece here is the top of the lid. And you can see I've folded on the score lines and put double-sided tape on the glue tabs. These next pieces that I've got here are the handle pieces. And you can see I'm just sorting them into big, medium and small. And they'll stack on top of each other for dimension and strength, like so. And there's a tiny little oval piece that I'm trying to find there, and that goes in the center like so. And there are 2 sets of these, and they'll join together back to back to make a nice strong handle. But it's a little bit fiddly trying to do it like this. But I'll show you more about that later. And these 2 pieces here make up the hinges that hold the handle. Moving on, these are the walls and the windows. So you can see these are the 2 end windows, and I've put double-sided tape behind the windows because that's where I'm going to attach my acetate to. And acetate is better with double-sided tape rather than glue. And these are the 2 larger windows for the side walls, and I've done the same thing with the double-sided tape on the back so that I can attach my acetate. Speaking of the acetate, these are the size pieces you'll need of the acetate. 2 pieces 4 inches by 5.5 inches and 2 pieces that are 7 inches by 5.5 inches. And I've also got the measurements there in centimetres. If you need it, you can pause the screen to write them down. So these are the acetate pieces. They're the 4 inch by 5.5. And they are for the 2 end windows. And then we've got the larger pieces, 7 inches by 5.5, 7 by 5.5. And they go with those windows. So there's those measurements again if you'd like to pause the screen to write them down. Next up, we're going to look at the feet and the base of the lantern, and you can see where I've folded and put double-sided tape on these glue tabs. I did make a little bit of a mistake here and put double-sided tape along that top edge. Don't put tape along there. I left this in so that you can see that I make mistakes too. When those pieces are put together, they make this shape, and you can see that there's no double-sided tape on those glue tabs that are facing now up towards the camera. That's how it's supposed to look. So sorry about that, guys. I do make mistakes too. You'll also need some chipboard, and this is going to strengthen the base of the lantern. You'll need a piece that's 8 1/4 by 5 1/4. And what I've used for my chipboard is those backing cardboard pieces that are on the back of our 12 by 12 paper pads. So I've used that. I've used 2 of those and I've glued them together just so that it's a little bit more stronger. And I'm just having a little bit of trouble there, putting that into there, and it will go on the underneath side of the base like so, and we'll glue that down. So there's those measurements again. Now what we also have is some T pieces that look like this, and this is going to go into the feet corners, and it's going to give the feet corners a little bit of extra strength as well. We'll go in like so, and that's going to give extra strength there, because you want this base of your lantern to be quite strong. You don't want to put your electronic candles in and the base of the lantern to sag. We don't want that. So to create these T-section pieces, you are going to need some more of that cardboard or chipboard or whatever you're going to use. And I've got the measurements there for you. So you're going to need 4 that are 1 inch by 7/8 of an inch. And I've also got the measurements there in centimetres if you need them. And that's going to be the side that faces out, like I'm showing here. And then you're going to need another 4 pieces that are 7/8 of an inch by 1/2 inch. And I've got the measurements there in centimetres as well. And they're going to create that centerpiece at the back of that larger piece. So that piece there. Then we're going to need some hinges, and they're going to be these pieces here that hold that centerpiece onto that larger front piece. And they're 3 1/4 of an inch by 1/2 inch. We're going to fold those in half and put double-sided tape along them, like I'm showing here. Now the measurements of those T-section pieces may differ for you depending on how thick your cardstock is. These are just a guide so you can trim as you need. Now moving on to the next piece that we'll talk about is this final piece here that goes on the inside of the lantern and forms part of the base on the inside. And you'll see I've also got some other pieces here, and these are the measurements of the inside of those score lines. And this is a measurement for you, 7 1/4 of an inch by 4 5/16 of an inch. And it's there in centimetres as well. And you'll need 5 or 6 of those, glue them on top of each other, and they'll get attached on the inside of those score lines of that piece. Okay, so that's all the pieces. Now it's time to start putting it all together. And to begin with, we're going to start with these framing or skeleton pieces. So we're going to use these smaller ones first. We'll put these 2 rectangle sized ones, the largest ones, to the side. That's the top of the lantern. We'll work on that later. But for now, we'll start on the 2 short ends and the 2 side pieces of this double lantern. And these pieces are going to fold up like so. This glue tab is going to get attached to that inside edge of that window frame. And 2 sides are triangle, as I'm showing here. They've got a slant, and the 2 short ends are squares like so. So I'm going to take the backings off the double-sided tape, and I'm going to maneuver this around so that I can see it properly and get that glued edge down along that edge of the opening. This is a little bit trickier to do with double-sided tape because the double-sided tape wants to grab when I don't want it to. So potentially this could be easier using glue for this particular part of the tutorial. But for me, it's a little bit quicker using double-sided tape. So you can see I'm adhering that edge with the double-sided tape right against the opening edge there. Just pressing it down, making sure it's getting a good hold. And you can see that's got a triangle slanted edge. Like so. I'm going to do the same thing on the opposite side. Just fold it over until it adheres along that edge. So you do need to be a little bit careful doing this. You need to make sure it's lining up nicely and then pressing it down. So that's the two long sides done. And then we'll move on to the end pieces, and as I said, this will fold down into a square shape. So there's 4 sides to fold and adhere against that inside edge. So if you're going to use double-sided tape, it will probably grab where you don't want it to, so you just have to be a little bit patient and use your pokey tool and figure out which way it's going to work best for you. And on these 4-sided ones, you can actually push that down flat and then fold it back up. And you'll see here there's a little bit of a gap. What I'm going to do with those at the end, once I've made them all, is I'm going to put hot glue in those corners. And that will stick that well. So those slanted edges are the edges we're going to use to join the sides together to make our frame for our lantern. You'll see that as we go on in the tutorial. So you can see there we've got our little opening, but we'll put some glue in there later and that will hold well. And we'll do the same with the next piece. It goes together exactly the same way. The longer edges on these short ends of the lantern fold over to a slanted edge. We're going to stick that double-sided edge down along that inside of the opening. So I'm just doing the same thing as what I've done with the other piece, just folding this over and attaching it to that inside edge. And using double-sided tape, it does get a little bit grabby when you don't want it to, so just have a bit of patience and take your time. Like I said, you could use glue, but I'm thinking in my mind that if I used glue for this, this would get extremely messy for me. So for the tutorial, I'd rather not be in a mess and just do it with ease with the double-sided tape and put up with the grabbiness. So I'm just pressing that down on the inside there. So just take your time. It'll be worth it in the end when the project looks amazing. And this is the fiddliest part of the whole thing. I'm just checking to make sure that's all sitting nicely. And do make sure if you're using double-sided tape that you do press your glued edges down firmly. It does help the tape to stick and stick well. So we'll get glue into those corners a little bit later. I'll speed this footage up now as the other 2 pieces off to the left there, they go together in exactly the same way. So I'll speed up the footage now. So that's the 2 end pieces done for the lantern, and now it's the 2 side pieces. With the side pieces of the lantern, it's the shorter sides that are the triangular shape. Okay, so they'll match up with the longer sides on the smaller piece. So 2 slanted sides will join together. And it's the longer sides, the top and bottom, that are the square shape. So I guess that's an easier way to explain it. The top and bottom are the square shape and the sides are the slanted triangle shape. Just take your time putting it together. Although I wish I could craft this fast. That'd be amazing. And this is our last side piece there, just putting that together. So the pokey tool comes in handy. Just making sure that's all sticking well. This is probably the most time-consuming part of the whole lantern, is making these frame pieces. Nearly there. And that's our last piece done. So then I went ahead with my hot glue gun and put hot glue in the corner pieces there. Just be careful you don't burn yourself. And just hold it until that hot glue grabs. And so of course I would have gone ahead and done all of that on all of those pieces. So here we've got our 4 frame pieces, the skeleton pieces, and these are going to get joined along those slanted edges, which gives us our mitre corners. So I'm just giving you a rough look here of how it's going to go together. So I'm going to stick double-sided tape along all of those slanted edges. I'm just doing that. I'll keep all this in for you so you can see. So I'm just putting tape on only the slanted edges. On all 4 pieces. And the double-sided tape I like to use is the Sukwang double-sided tape. It holds extremely well and holds up over time. So I'm going to get the short end and I'm going to take the backings off the double-sided tape. And I'm going to join it to one of the long pieces along a slanted edge, because then the lantern is the same height all the way around. So just joining them together and making sure the glue gets a good stick. And it's not that difficult to put these together. Goes together and the pieces fit together quite nicely. And that's a credit to Nicole for the way she designs these 3-dimensional projects. So just removing the backings off all of the double-sided tape before putting that last piece into place. And you can see why now we're calling this the frame or the skeleton. Just making sure that all lining up nicely and fitting together nicely. And now you can see our frame is put together, our skeleton, and now that we build the lantern now from here. Next up I'm going to make the lid and the handle. So I'm just getting those pieces organised. Just going to put the handle pieces to the side and work on putting the lid together. So I'm going to start off with one of the short ends and remove the backings of the double-sided tape, and we'll join this onto one of those longer pieces. And like I always say, take your time, make sure things line up nicely. I've got 2 or 3 fingers behind holding the pieces as I'm joining. Sorry, I slipped out of frame a little bit there, sorry about that. Just taking care to make sure that's going together nicely. Then I'll get the other long piece, take the backings off the glue tabs, off the tape on the glue tabs. And join it to the other side, making sure that we're getting some curvature in there as well. Just take your time here, make sure things are lining up nicely along that edge. You can see our lid starting to come together. And I'm just going to put this end piece into place. Just taking these backings off. And joining that to the long side, making sure it's lining up nicely before pressing the glue tab down. Sorry, I'm a little bit out of frame here. I was very involved in what I was doing and forgot to check that I was still in frame. So I changed here to my little tweezers. The pokey tool wasn't giving me any joy today. And I got these little tweezers in a 2 set from AliExpress. And they're very handy. So we're just going to join this lid up in the same way that we joined the pieces together to begin with. Just taking our time and pressing those glue tabs into place along the edge. Making sure they're all stuck down nicely. Then I'm going to put this piece in place. We'll do that from the inside. Got something stuck there on my double-sided tape. It doesn't want to come off. So I'm just going to stick one edge down. It got to me, I had to take it off. So I'm just going to join that on the outside edge, just one side, so we can get it lined up nicely. Just taking care and then pressing it into place once I'm happy with how it's positioned. And then we'll tuck that in and work on from the inside. It doesn't want to cooperate with me, of course. But it's only paper, and I'm going to tell it how it's going to be. I'm not going to let paper get the better of me. So then I'm just going to work on these glue tabs on the inside. Just take the backings off and using my tweezers and pressing that down along the edge, making sure that it's nice and straight. Have to go back and adjust from the outside. This is a little bit tricky putting this top on, but if you take your time, you'll get there. Just making sure things are lined up nicely before pressing it down on the inside. And then I'll do the same on the other end. Sometimes I think it would be easier with paper crafting if I had 3 hands. That would make things a lot easier. And then just getting that last side. I always grab the pokey tool because it's so handy, but I'm finding now too that having the tweezers is handy as well. And I've never really been a crafter that's used tweezers before, so I know that they're very handy. So just making sure that those glue tabs are getting stuck down nicely. Okay, so that's looking good, and now I'm going to take the backings off these bottom tabs and fold them up. That's going to give that bottom edge of the lid some strength. And I finally found my Teflon bone folder, because I do like to use that when I'm pressing down the edges. It had gone missing in action in my craft room and I've just relocated it. Okay, so just getting that last edge folded up and pressed down. So what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to put the decorative panels onto the lid. I may as well. And you can see the decorative paper that I've chosen has like a cracked paint effect, which I thought would look nice on the lantern. So I'm just giving the pieces some curvature using my embossing tool here, bone folder, whatever you like to call it, burnishing tool. And I'm going to glue those into position. So I've sped the footage up here. I do like to use glue when I'm putting on my decorative panels because I've got that extra wriggle room to make sure things are lined up nicely. Before pressing them down into place. You could do this lantern in many different colours, styles, whatever you like. So just getting those last panels in place before putting the top panel on. And that's looking nice. So it's time now to start putting the handle together and put that in place on the top of the lantern. So to make the handle, there are 6 pieces. So you've got 2 larger size pieces, 2 medium size pieces, and 2 thinner pieces. And I'll just put those hinges to the side, and then there's 2 oval shapes. So first up I'm going to glue the smallest piece. So these obviously lay out one on top of each other. You guys can see that. It gives the piece some dimension and some strength, and it looks nice as well. And then I'm going to glue these 2 pieces to the larger piece. Like so. And the little oval, if I can pick it up, gets glued in the center there. Just giving it some nice dimension. And then you'll do the same thing with the other pieces, starting with the smaller one, gluing it to the middle-sized one, and of course this one didn't want to go together as easily as the other one. It wanted to slip and not line up properly. Felt like I had fumble fingers. And then we glue that one to the larger piece. Like so. And then we'll stick that little oval in the center. And then we'll put some glue on the back of that one, and we'll glue the other one to it back to back. And this makes a nice strong handle. Just making sure that it all lines up nicely. And just put that side to dry now. Then we've got these little hinge pieces here, and to use these you'll fold them up like so, and then pinch it in the middle so that it looks like a W or an M, depending on which way you're looking at it. And the end foot piece there of the handle goes there like so. And I'll do the same thing to the other one. Just fold it up and then pinch it in the middle. So they've got that V shape. Like so. Just reinforcing those folds. And that will go like that. So we'll get these glued onto the top of the lid, like so. You could measure this, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to eyeball it. And I'm going to glue this down, making sure I've got good glue coverage over that whole bottom of that piece. And then stick it down. As you can see, just eyeballing it. Then I'm going to stick the handle on. Oh, sorry, put the handle in there just to get a judge of where the other one's going to go. Yep, I think I've got that sorted. You could measure this if you wanted to, but I mostly just eyeball stuff. So I'm just applying glue to that one, and I'm going to use the handle to assist with the placement to make sure it's not too tight or too loose. Adjust it, make sure I'm happy with it, and then stick it down. And I'm happy with how that's sitting. Make sure that's pressed down. You can see the handle moves freely. And I'll set that aside to dry. So moving on, we're going to get this piece, which is the base of the lantern. It goes on the inside of the base of the lantern. Just folding along the score lines there, and I'm going to get these pieces and glue them one on top of each other, and they will get stuck in that area in between the score lines of that piece. I'll show you shortly. So I'm just gluing all of these pieces together, one on top of each other. And this, of course, is going to add strength. As I said before, we need to make sure that the base of our lantern is strong to be able to hold what you want to put inside it without the bottom sagging. So I think I've got 6 of these that I'm gluing one on top of the other. And then it's going to get glued inside like so. I'm just gluing that down and pressing that into place. Just making sure everything's getting a good stick. And then I'm going to bring in the frame just to show you how this is going to go. That's going to slot down nicely into that spot there. So I'm going to put some double-sided tape along the outside edge of those glue tabs of that piece, and that's going to assist with gluing that into position inside that frame. So just getting that last bit on. And I may as well stick the decorative layer in place for that piece too. So I've just got my decorative layer here and I'm going to glue that into position. And that fits nicely like so. Once I get it straight. I do love this cracked paint effect paper. It fits in so well with the lantern. So I'll put that aside to dry, and it's time to move on to putting this feet base together. So as I said before, this is the only part here, these two lower tabs of where you put your double-sided tape. Don't put it along that top edge. So I'm just joining these together. You've got one short, one long, one short, one long, and then we're going to join them together so that you've got a short, a long, a short, and a long. That makes sense. Just glue them, attach those together and press them down. So you can see short, long, and they're attached by that one glue tab. Now we'll close up the shape. We're just leaving that bottom glue tab for the time being. That's to construct the feet. We'll do that in a minute. Just take the backings off the tape here and join this shape together. Just make sure that that glue is getting a good hold. So as I said before, these top edges here that are facing the camera, they don't need double-sided tape on them. So I'll fix that problem shortly. I didn't want to waste the pieces. So we just take the backings off those other tabs and join them down as I'm showing here. That makes the nice little corner feet. Like so. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get that chipboard piece that's 8 1/4 by 5 1/4, and I'm going to put that inside that base. And as I said before, I've used 2 pieces of cardboard that were the backings of those 12 by 12 paper pads that you can buy. So I've got 2 joined together here just for some extra strength, and I'm going to put some glue just around the edges. Just being a little bit generous with the glue, and then I'm going to stick that down on that inside edge there. Just maneuvering it, a little bit tricky in that corner. I'll just force it in there and then press that all down, making sure that that strengthening piece is getting a good stick. You could also stick this piece down before you made those corners, so it's up to you. It doesn't matter either way. So as I said before, there doesn't need to be any double-sided tape on that top edge. We'll sort that out later. Mistakes can always be fixed. So it's time now to move on to these T section pieces, and we're going to put these together. So I've got my pieces that are 1 inch by 7/8 of an inch, and our other pieces, our hinge pieces, and they're going to get attached to the other piece, which is 7/8 of an inch by 1/2 inch. We're just going to fold one of those hinges and put it right up against the long edge of that smaller piece, one either side of it. Like so. Sorry if I'm a little bit too far down the frame there. And then I'm going to attach that to one of those other larger pieces, like so. Very easy to make, and that will go into the corner. Now if you've cut yours and things are a little bit tight or they're too big, just trim them down. It will depend on what thickness of chipboard you use or how you make this strengthening piece, whatever cardboard you've got lying around in your craft room. these measurements are purely a guide. They're not set in stone. You can adjust them for what you're using. So I'm just making the other T-section pieces, just joining the hinges to either side of that center pillar. And this can just be your scrap that you've got in your stash. I'm actually using the back of a paper pad, just one thickness. It's thin enough, or thick enough, sorry, to be what I need it to do. And attaching it to that other larger piece, and that will go inside like so. And we will hot glue these in so that they're there forever. I know that electronic tea candles wouldn't be very heavy, but you might want to put something else inside this lantern. A small plant would look nice. And the weight of a plant, you'd need something to support that. So this is why we're doing some extra strength work for the base of our lantern. You wouldn't keep the plant in it, obviously. It'd be a nice way to gift a plant. But if you're going to put something heavy in it, you want to be able to put it in there and know that the bottom's not going to sag. So I've got all my T-section pieces made. They all get made in exactly the same way. And we're going to put some hot glue on them and get them into position. So I'll just take that measurements piece out of the way. And all I'm doing is just running a bead of hot glue just along that edge there, which is the back edge that'll go right into that corner. That's all it needs. Just something to hold it into position. Just a bead of glue along that edge there, and then just push it straight into the corner. And hold it there until the hot glue takes up. And that's all those pieces need. Just making sure that that's sitting in there nicely. And we'll get the last one glued into place. And just hold it there until that hot glue sets up. So that's our 4 corner feet, nice and strong, and our strong base. Just giving you a close look. You're not really going to see it, but it's there serving a very important purpose. Okay. So I'm happy with how that's looking. So it's time now to move on to doing the windows, and I've got my acetate measurements here for you again, and I'm going to put the acetate on the inside of the windows. So I'm speeding up the footage here to take all of these backings off, and it is way better to adhere to acetate with double-sided tape than it is with glue. Glue takes too long to dry and it moves around too much. So we'll just get that done. You could also put vellum here if you wanted to, but I like being able to see inside the lantern. So I'm just taking all of those backings off. And then sticking the acetate down. It is a nice addition having the acetate. So that's my windows ready to go, and I'm going to put the decorative panels in place on these now as well. May as well, it's easier than doing it once the lantern's constructed. Just making sure I'm getting glue on all of the areas and then stick that down into place. Like I said, I do like to use glue for my decorative panels. It does make it easier to make sure they're in good position because you've got that wriggle room. Now it's onto these last two. And would you believe it, I dropped both of these straight onto the acetate. Yep, there's one. And I do wipe this glue away. I'll do a better job of it later. I just get the panels in place first. Just pressing that down. And I did the exact same thing with this one. See, dropped it again on the other piece. Couldn't believe it. These things happen to me as well. So it's time now to move on to the last pieces that will go on as part of the framework. These pieces support the lid and are part of the top of the lantern. They're a little bit different to the way we put together the frame. They have a different mitre, and we're going to do the long sides first. So just folding that, reinforcing that fold, and that exposed glue edge will get adhered down along this edge here. So you'll notice that this one does look a little bit different, and you will need to take your time making sure that you can get these adhered straight. So you can push these down so that they're flat. And I'm using my pokey tool to assist here. It does get tricky with the double-sided tape because it wants to grab where I don't want it to. So it's just requiring a little bit of extra patience and time. So once that's glued down, you can press it down and then fold it back. And you can push it back up and it's the right shape. So I'm just speeding up the footage here. Just so to do the other side. Just pressing that down flat and then folding it back up, and you can see that you get two shapes like that. Then the other short sides will get folded in, the mitered edges. The same procedure. I'm going to put some glue though on these corners, because once you fold that down, it'll fold in over that top corner, so you'll be able to glue it down into place. A little bit easier than the other ones when we made the frame for the sides of the lantern. And the same thing on the other end. Just a little bit of glue on those corners and then fold this down to make your mitered edge. A little bit tricky, but you'll get there. And I took a little bit long getting this and had to put some more glue into one side here. And just hold that into position while the glue dries. And that's that piece there. Then we have this piece here. This is going to get constructed in the same way. I'm going to do the long sides first. And it is done in the same way as the other piece, it's just this piece is narrower. So that's one side done, and we'll just work on the opposite side. Making sure it's lining up nicely. And then you've got your other shorter ends, and we'll just put a dab of glue on those corners to fold the mitre down over, and it's got something to stick to. You can push these ends down and then fold them back up again and push the miters together into the glue. Same thing on the opposite end. Push that down and then a dab of glue, and then you can fold that in, or push that in, sorry. Making sure that that's getting a good hold. And with this piece, we're going to attach it to the top of the other piece. This is the recessed area that you're going to put your lid into. So I'm just going to put some glue along the bottom edge of that smaller, narrower piece. And glue it into position onto the other piece. And you're going to glue this centrally and make sure there's an even gap all the way around, both on the outside edge there and on the inner edge. It's a nice even gap all the way around. And then I'm going to get the lid and put it into position, just so it gets used to being in that spot. You will find it difficult to put this lid in to begin with. It is a snug fit, and that is so that the lid does not come off. If you accidentally shake it or whatever, the lid's not going to fall off. So you just need to do a little bit of finagling to get this lid in place the first time. So just getting this lid into position. That bottom corner wants to give me struggle. And then you'll go around, you'll press around all your sides, make sure the glue's getting a good stick. And that lid can sit in there now and get used to being in that spot so that it can come on and off easier once it's on top of the actual lantern. So I'm just there pressing those sides down, making sure that that glue is getting a good hold all the way around. So I'll put that aside to dry and move on to the next part. So I've brought the frame in and I'm going to stick the windows into position. And you'll notice on the windows that there are those glue tabs on all of the sides with double-sided tape on the glue tabs. So I'm just fitting this in and you'll see that it fits in perfectly, like so. So I'm just going to pop that out and take the double-sided tape off one of the edges, which is the bottom edge, and just get that bottom edge in first. You have to be careful because the double-sided tape is going to grab when you don't want it to, so it just takes a little bit of time. I did work out an easier way to put these in, which I'll share that with you shortly. This is probably the hardest way to do it, what I'm doing now. But we learn these things as we go on. And if I come up with any tips whilst I'm putting these things together, I'm always happy to share. So I'm just taking the backings off the rest of those glue tabs before manoeuvring this piece into position. And this piece fits exactly within the frame parameters. So I'm just getting that in, taking care, trying to hold the glue tabs so that they don't stick before I want them to. And you can see that it's giving me trouble, but like I said, I did work out a quicker and easier way to do this. So I'm just putting that into position, making sure I'm happy with how it's looking, and then I will press the glue in, the glue tabs down, sorry, from that other side. And it fits exactly along that inside edge. So just pressing that down. And the window sits flush like so. So I'm going to do the other one. I'm just going to take the bottom backings off. This was a silly move. I made two silly moves with this lantern, putting these walls in with the windows. Don't take all the glue tabs off at once. It's a nightmare. It just made it struggle street, because I'm trying to fit it into place and I'm trying to keep an eye on it so that it's not sticking anywhere else where it shouldn't. So yeah, I don't recommend doing that. Don't take all your glue tabs off at once. And this is where I found my answer. I had it laying on my work surface, And I thought, well, that's going to line up perfectly. And it did. So I was very happy with that way. So that's how I did the other two sides. And I know that's probably a very obvious solution, but it took me a little minute to click on. So I'm just doing the other side piece, the long sides. I'm just going to get the bottom attached first, and then I'm going to lay it down. Make sure that I'm happy with that. And then I'll lay it down onto my work surface to finish it off like so. So that just fits in nicely, and it can't go any further than my workspace. Just pushing in all of those sides, pressing it down, and then I'll go fold down the glue tab like so and get the backing off with my tweezers. This was a little bit easier. At least I knew it was going to be straight and lined up exactly. This was a long tutorial to do, so you can imagine that my brain isn't quite with it. So it took me a little while longer to work out how to do things easier. It was a couple of hours of filming for this tutorial, which I don't mind. I'd like you guys to be comfortable and confident in what you're putting together, but this is a big project. Worth it though in the end, because it looks amazing in the end. So that's that one in place. And I was happier with how I was able to glue them in. So onto the last window wall to go into the lantern. I've just got it on my work surface. You can't see it very well here because the top is blocking the view, but I'm basically just making sure it's in position, pulling back the glue tabs and taking the backings off and pressing them into place against the edge. And it fits in perfectly, nice and flush, like so. Just getting all of those glue tabs in place. And I did make the other single version of this lantern, but it was a long time ago, so I couldn't remember what I had done with that one. And I could have looked at my own tutorial, or that would have been helpful, but I didn't think of it at the time. It'll be over a year since I've made that other tutorial for the single lantern. And a year's a long time in paper crafting. I've made so many projects and done so many tutorials since that one. So that's all of our windows in place on the lantern. I'm just clearing things out the way, and I've brought in this base piece, and I'm going to take the backings off the tabs that are on the outside edge there, and this piece fits down inside along that inside edge, and it fits perfectly. So I'm just pressing that down. It's a little bit tricky to do when you're filming a tutorial because I'm trying to keep it straight against my work surface or flat against my work surface and press down from above. And it's hard with the camera above my head because I don't want to bonk my head on it. So just pressing that down, making sure those glue tabs are getting a good stick along that inside bottom edge. There we go, giving you a look, and then it's flush on the bottom. Just pressing that in so those glue tabs on the inside are getting a good stick too. And then it's time to stick this onto the base. And this was the moment where I realised that you don't put double-sided tape on those top edges here. But I came up with a solution for this. I'm going to put a piece of cardstock over the top that the glue tabs will adhere to, and it'll also give another layer of strength for the base of the lantern. So crisis averted, thankfully. But yeah, you wouldn't need to put the double-sided tape on these glue tabs because the lantern will go in over the top and cover them. Because you will see when you go to put the lantern over the top here, you'll end up with a sticky edge because the lantern doesn't fit exactly over the top of this base. There is a 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch gap all the way around like a ledge, and so then you would have a sticky edge, so you don't want that. So to combat this for my tutorial today, I'm putting a piece of cardstock which is the same size as that piece of chipboard, which is 8 1/4 by 5 1/4 of an inch, and that's going to cover that. Be careful when you're pushing down, don't do what I just did then and nearly pushed the base into next week. And then the lantern sits on top like so. You can see that it is designed to have a ledge all the way around. So I'm sure you guys understand what I'm talking about. That just shows you a little bit of a workaround if you do put double-sided tape on the tab there that's not meant to have double-sided tape on it. So I'm just applying glue now to the base of the lantern. I'm being fairly generous with the glue, getting good coverage, and I'm going to put it on the base. As I said, this will have about an 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch ledge all the way around. More of a 1/4 of an inch, but it just depends. An 1/8 to 1/4, around about that. Ledge all the way around. You can see it just there on the side. I'm just trying to get it straightened up, and then I'm going to push it from the inside, making sure everything gets a good stick. You can see there I've got the same amount of gap all the way around the edge. It is a little bit difficult to see because I'm trying to push the base onto the lantern. Just trying to make sure that the glue gets a good stick all the way around. And when you're using a lot of glue or generous with your glue, you do need to hold things in place for a little bit longer. So I'm just pressing that, making sure that that's in place. So that's looking good. So I'm going to bring in the top here with the lid, and that's going to go in place like so. I'm going to take the lid off so that I can stick this piece on properly. So this piece gets attached to the top, and you will attach that centrally, so make it as even as possible. So I'm going to put glue along this edge, the top edge of the lantern, a little bit generous with the glue so that it gets good coverage and that top piece gets a good stick. Get a bit more in the corners. So if you're a bit messy putting your sides together, it looked a bit messy on the top, doesn't matter, this is going to go over the top and cover it. Again, this is going to have an edge on the underneath side, so make sure that it's going on straight. See, mine's giving me a little bit of trouble because I'm trying to lift it up and it wants to come apart. So I'm just trying to make sure that it's lining up nicely. I'm going to turn it over now so that I can make sure it's straight from the underneath side. This is hard to see from the top side because the base is in the way. But I'm just making sure that that top piece is central. And pressing down the glue. Just giving it a press from the top. To make sure that glue gets a good hold. Just wait a couple of minutes and making sure that that's getting a good hold. And then flip it over and making sure that it stayed in place. Make sure I haven't squashed it. And I'm going to go in on the inside there and press around the inside as well. A little bit out of frame, sorry about that. Those last little bits, making sure that they've stuck down. You do need to hold this a little bit longer, especially if you've used a lot of glue, like I did. And then we can put the top on. And again, you might need to finagle this lid the first few times, but each time you do it, it should go into place a little bit easier than the last time. It's just until the paper builds up a memory that that's what it's got to do. There, that's on. I'm happy with how that's fitting. And it's good that it fits firmly, because then the lid won't just fall off. If you wanted to pick it up and carry it around, the lid's just not going to bounce off. So here's the lantern, so you can see I get a good shake then and it didn't come off. I'm holding it upside down and the lid doesn't come off, which I think that's good. So that's my lantern, it's all ready to be decorated. I'm just giving you a look all the way around. And I did realise that I hadn't put the decorative panels onto the feet here of the lantern, so I'm going to do that now and get that done. And then I'm going to take the lantern off camera and finish decorating it. So I want to put some finishing touches on it and also clean the acetate. And I have got some electronic candles that I'd like to put in, so I'm going to get all that organised and then come back. And I'll share the finished lantern with you. But that is the tutorial all finished, and I'll be back soon with the finished lantern. So I'm back now with the finished lantern, and I thought it best just to show you the photos. It's very difficult to get the lantern under my video camera, as it is a large lantern. So I've got some photos here, and I've got it decorated in my style. I love the flowers on there. And the two electronic candles in there, they're remote controlled and they can be different colours. So it's just white in that shot, and also in this one. It's a different view from the front. And then I've got some lights off now and it's looking stunning. It does have a bit of a pink tinge to it, which I think just looks nice against the pink flowers. And then the yellow tone of the candles. And I've also taken a darker picture with less light. So that's my tutorial finished for today. I hope you've enjoyed watching and that you feel inspired to make one of these lanterns. Don't forget to check the description box down below for the links that I've previously mentioned. And if you'd like to subscribe to my YouTube channel, I would really love that too. Thanks very much for watching today. Have a great day, and until next time, it's bye for now.